Hello, I'm Greg Cartwright of Cartwright's Creations. I'm really glad that you could join me today in my woodworking shop. I'm going to take you to my wood collecting barn, if you will, in a minute because I have a huge collection of woods. I have about 400 pieces of historic wood from the 50 of the 55 counties that have a red dot on them. I'm really excited about being able to share my collection and my process for making wooden items from my historic woods. Let me tell you about two or three of my really nice pieces of wood in my collection from Cabell County. Of course, Cabell County is the home of Marshall University. This piece of wood is part of a pew that was in the Campus Christian Center at Marshall when it was built in 1961. This pew was featured in the chapel scene of the We Are Marshall movie. What a neat piece of West Virginia history. Of course, one of the other famous things about Cabell County is Blenko glass. If you can see this, this is one of the molds that Blenko uses to make hand-blown sheet glass. They're one of only two companies in the entire world that still make hand-blown sheet glass. And then over here, this wood is from the Milton Covered Bridge. The locals claim that that is the most heavily traveled covered bridge in the state of West Virginia because 40 to 50,000 people walk across that every year for the West Virginia Pumpkin Festival. The wood in this set of shelving are from Monongalia County. Almost all of them are from WVU. I have wood from 14 of the buildings at WVU. This is one of my favorites. This is a piece of flooring from the Coliseum at WVU, which opened in 1970. I also have part of the President's Home. I have Stewart Hall, the most iconic building. No, not the most iconic building. The most iconic building is Woodburn, and I have wood from a classroom and from one of the offices in Woodburn. So, welcome to WVU. I was born and raised in Upshur County, and I have a really personally cool piece of wood I want to show you. This is a piece of a floor beam from the Lawrence Grade School. I went to Lawrence Grade School, one of the last one-room schools in the county. My older brother attended there, and my father attended the same school. So this is Upshur County personal history for me. Well, this is my 4-H set of shelves. With the exception of these pieces of wood came from the Jackson's Mill State 4-H camp, which was the first state 4-H camp in the nation. And these came from the original council circle, and it was remodeled not too long ago, and I got wood from each tribe section of the council circle, as well as a section of each of their totem poles. This is a piece of pin oak that was taken out when they built the bus turning loop at the Culture Center on the grounds of the State Capitol building in Charleston. I want to show you some of the things that I make out of the historic woods that I've collected. Although most of my work is with pens, because everybody uses pens, I do make a number of other items. I have a laser engraver, so I make refrigerator magnets, basket discs, keychains, Christmas tree ornaments. In addition to that, I make a couple of different styles of wine bottle stoppers, one that has a corkscrew in it, one that doesn't. And then I have a friend in Australia who tells me that she doesn't call it a seam ripper, she calls it a stitch nipper. But I make stitch nippers, letter openers, bottle openers, a variety of other things. And I make about 7 or 8 different styles of pens. My two favorites are this one, which is called the Executive Pen, and this one that has a really neat feature. It's a replica 30-06 bullet. It's got a little replica 30-06 rifle on it for a clip, and the cool part is it's got a bolt action to put the pin point out. Each of these different styles of pens takes a different length little brass tube. Each one comes with a kit that has a little brass tube, and they vary in length. And each comes with a set of bushings where there's a standard size shaft. You'll see that a little later when I turn for you. The step down part fits inside of the little tube, and the outside tells me how thick to leave the wood. So I'm going to be making a bullet pin for you a little later. Although I don't make them, I have two different styles of boxes that are available to display pins and some of my other items. This is a nice maple box that can be laser engraved. This one's not, but I can engrave it with a name or a logo as long as it's not copyrighted. And it makes a really nice presentation piece if you're giving these as gifts. It also has a unique feature that it has two inserts, and the one that's hidden right now will hold a pen and pencil set, which I do make, and in this fashion it holds a single item. The other style that I have is, I think, very appropriate for the bolt action bullet pens because it's a replica authentic rifle case. And every pen that I make comes with, I guess you'd call it a certificate of authenticity, a little card that describes the history of the wood from which that item is made. My first goal in making a pen is to get a piece of the wood that is approximately 3/4 of an inch square. My primary tool for doing that is the table saw. And so I'm going to take a board from the West Virginia National Cemetery that I have picked for our demonstration today, and I'm going to cut a piece off the edge so I end up with a board about 3/4 of an inch square. I'm going to use a miter gauge to make sure that I have a square cut on the end of the board. I always clamp to that so there's no vibration, no opportunity for anything but a perfectly square cut. Now I'm going to use the little block that is specific for the bullet pen. The little box at the end of the table saw has all the little blocks, and they're all labeled because each style of pen takes a different size block. The next step is to drill a hole in the little block that I've just created. I have 4 drill presses in my shop because different style pens use different size holes. I'm using the vacuum to pull the chips out of the little block as it's being drilled so that I get a nice clean hole. The self-centering vise centers the block directly underneath the drill bit and holds the block perfectly vertically. The next step will be to glue a tube inside the little block. I use super glue. I put 3 or 4 little stripes of glue down the tube. And then using the insertion tool, I slowly twist the tube as it's pushed into the block to ensure that I have a good coating of glue on the tube. So let's go to the lathe. I told you earlier about the little bushings. I put those in the block, one in each end. I slide it onto the shaft on my lathe. I use a couple of spacers. And tighten the nut on the end to secure the entire piece. Notice I turn it by hand to make sure that the little block doesn't hit the tool rest. And then that's my favorite chisel. I use it for probably 95% of the turning that I do. Remember that each style of pen has a different size bushing, and my goal is to turn away the wood until I get down to the exposed part of the bushing. So now I will sand the tube that's still left there. I start with 220 grit paper. That is called extra fine. It's real fine. My goal is just to take any of the little bumps out, to fine tune the fit to the bushing, and just smooth it out. Then I will use 320 grit, which is extra fine paper. And once I get the initial sanding done, my goal is really just to take the scratches out that are left from the previous grit. And then my final sanding will be done with 600 grit, which is really not much more abrasive than a rough paper towel. Once I'm finished with the sanding part, I will apply a polish to it. I use Mylan's High Build Friction Polish, which is a combination of alcohol, wax, and shellac. I put 3 or 4 drops on, and I use a paper towel, and I'm holding that as tight as I can to generate heat to melt the polish into the wood. Put a second coat on. And a third, and you notice each one of them takes a little less polish. The next step is to engrave the pen. This pen is made out of wood from the West Virginia National Cemetery, and so that's what I have chosen to engrave. I create the font in Corel Draw. I can use any of the numerous fonts from Word or any of the others that you can download from the internet. I can also do graphics, but in this case I chose just to do typing. So my laser engraver is actually sending about 1,200 little laser shots in every inch that it goes back and forth, and it is burning the wood. The final step in making a pen is to press together the pieces. This is the kit that I had picked. This is a gunmetal bolt action bullet pen. And this press gives me complete control as I press the pieces together, and it assists in aligning the pieces so that I get a good fit on putting the pen together. An ink cartridge, a spring, and there's our finished pen.